because like I mentioned just a minute, there's quite a bit to cover in terms of questions. Okay, so that should get going and trigger on YouTube shortly. And it looks like it did, so let me copy it and post it. Oh wait, it already went to the Sphere TV. That's good, but I still like to put it in Stage Archive. There we go. All right. Good, got some more people coming in now. Most excellent. All right, let's get started then. So as we do with each week, we'll get started with some of the core updates, reviewing those, talk about some community thoughts and concerns, and then of course we'll dive into the AMA questions, which there were quite a few for this week, so that's good. It's always good to see these different types of questions, especially in the heat of this particular market we find ourselves in. So, the Treasury does continue to perform quite well despite the market, which is awesome. We, as you know, or may or may not know, we sold over $1.1 million worth of Matic to USDC stables at local price peaks. I know Sim was very happy with that, which is, as I mentioned, now in stables. Sphere's mission with that Treasury is to keep it alive and thriving, as it really is the lifeblood of the infrastructure that's being built. So the more the Treasury grows, of course, then the more that Sphere grows. And it also better reflects in terms of value relative to the market cap. So we want to see that Treasury grow as much as it can. Gauss is launching, or they launched, I should say. And with them, we've burned 300 million Sphere, which was valued at $1 million to celebrate their launch. And we are now at over 1.27 billion Sphere tokens burned, which is 14% of the total supply. And our circulating supply is now down to 7.69 billion tokens. And of course, that will only ever continue to reduce. So I think it's really satisfying to see well over 1 billion tokens now burned, and 14%. That's excellent at this early in the stage. As I'm sure you all saw from the announcements, or was it in the announcements, or was it in the AMA? I'm thinking that with Gauss, but regardless, due to the market conditions, Dyson is being kept as a work in progress. We will still be revealing strategies in time, so certainly stay tuned on Dyson's Twitter. But at present moment, we're going to keep Dyson as a work in progress simply because of the current volatility and sentiment of the market. Even so, Dyson, and I mentioned this last AMA, I think that Dyson's a great opportunity to broaden the exposure of Sphere to multiple other projects and communities to benefit both them and Sphere. So I'm still excited for when Dyson will be launched. I think it's going to open a lot of different opportunities. And then codename Sphere Lend is also receiving love, so that the code is tested. Sphere Lend will be Sphere's in-house lending protocol to borrow and lend assets and earn yield at 0% interest. I'll just check in on Gio's announcements. Thank you. Much appreciated. So I'm going to jump back to stage chat. Okay. V3 is also progressing nicely. Code is being tested and kind of comparing to other types of locking mechanisms within the space to ensure that V3 will ultimately run smoothly, which is good to see as well. Another big part of the ecosystem I'm very excited to see fully in action. And then last week we had over 100 Spherians of you guys in a community poker event, with the first, second, and third place winners receiving the prizes. And we'll certainly be hosting more events, so stay tuned on Discord. Also, if you have any other ideas for different community events, we would love to hear those, and can certainly integrate them. And I've mentioned this before. I love the idea of like an art type of contest, that sort of a thing. So different ideas like that we would love to hear. All right, for you, those of you coming on in, thanks for joining. I will be moving on now to voice of the community. So within this section, actually, before I get into that, as Ultra mentioned, if you have any suggestions for Sphere in general, whether it be community events or otherwise, really encourage you to post that in the suggestions section of the Discord. Our moderators are really good at reviewing all of these different chats. So, if you have a good idea and you want to share it, certainly we would love to see it in hashtag suggestions under the lounge tab of the Discord. All right. Melino, I'm going to jump into your question. Let's see, is there anything to show that what Sphere has been building since everything's delayed or put on hold because of market conditions? We may release things in time. For example, with Dyson, we may continue to show different strategies that will be part of Dyson. So, follow us, keep following us in the announcements, keep following us on the Twitter, and things will certainly be revealed in time. Hey there, T1, what is up? All right. On to voice of the community. And again, this wasn't really questions this time so much as it was just some general thoughts that we put together, especially with the help of CryptoFat in terms of market conditions and things that we can say about what's going on. So regarding the many centralized exchange issues now, including FTX, in the end, the blockchain does not lie and is undefeated. And that permanence will always have a powerful use in a world where otherwise very little can be trusted. So a lot of people will often say blockchain's undefeated, and it certainly merits that transparency, which is excellent. Also, if you're here, you're surviving a brutal year in crypto, and you definitely deserve a pat on the back. If you believe in the blockchain, what it stands for, what it accomplishes, what it can do, there will certainly be new opportunities in time, but you always want to take care when making financial decisions. Emotional decision making will almost inevitably be followed by regret. So always try and be cognizant when you're making financial decisions. The current market conditions really don't mean much for Sphere and what Sphere is building. Sure, it's delaying things a little bit because we want to try and capture more positive sentiment. But in terms of what we're actually building, it doesn't have that much of an impact. Sphere and its assets are structured in a way to build during a bear market and to be present during a bear market. And we have certainly proved that, especially with the performance of our treasury. We are, in general, focusing on inefficiencies in crypto and DeFi. So there's always going to be a market for that over time as people seek to find more capital efficient means of using their assets. One comment too about marketing. We have to react to the situations we are in and focus on cost versus return. So at the end of the day, the marketing side of Sphere is going to be fluid and adaptive. It's going to respond to the market conditions. And one thing that I would like to say on this is it's always going to be better to market something to those who are already seeking it rather than try and convince people of something they did not want to begin with. So just a comment on the market sentiment and marketing. Also, liquidity, ultimately liquidity is king, right? So building liquidity services is going to be more helpful in the long term versus focusing on marketing preemptively. All right. I did see a question come up here in stage chat. Did you have let me see. T1, did you put a... Oh yeah, you did. So you this is actually, you actually copy pasted from your question, AMA questions. Never fear, I will certainly respond to that. I have that in my list from AMA questions. So thank you. And actually, without further ado, let's get to it. So I have to find where I left off. Just give me a second here. Okay, I think we are here, yes, with Ferret question. So for those on Discord, I will repeat the questions and those who ask them. And then people on YouTube, of course, can follow along with my screen. So first question by Ferret, what are the plans going forward with Sphere? So with the past week of crypto being a very difficult one, it actually has very little impact on Sphere and its plans, as I mentioned, outside of kind of putting a pause on the release of different projects like Dyson. Now, while Matic has been very volatile, it has settled into a similar price as before all the drama, and Sphere was able to de-risk some of its Matic to stables, as I mentioned earlier. The Treasury's doing healthy. Dyson will come soon once the drama with the market settles. We've got V3 being worked on, Sphere Lend, all these other projects that we've mentioned in the past, as well as many other surprises and things in the work up our sleeves. And you may also be interested in looking specifically at the Sphere roadmap, and you can find that homepage of sphere.finance. Towards the bottom, just click see this full Sphere roadmap, and you'll be able to see a lot of different information in terms of where we are, what we are still building. There's a lot of different code names in here of different projects, but also, you know, we've got Preon's launch still in the works that was announced very early that Preon would be a thing. We got the liquid markets, Sphere V3, of course, Covenant, quantum liquidity, and quantum liquidity as a service. To touch on T1, your question as well. And then all these different things as well, right? This codename Arcturus, I can't even pronounce that. Codename Epsilon Pegasi, or Pegasi, I'm not sure. These names. Codename Denabola, codename Regal, or Rigel, I don't even know. Codename Pleiades. I'm sorry. I know I'm butchering the pronunciations, but you get the point. There's a lot of things still in the works with Sphere, and this is our time to build and kind of put our nose to the grindstone and build out all these different things, or as many of these things as we can, while the market is in so much turmoil. It kind of gives us time to pause, work on building, and then come back with more products once that volume and liquidity is starting back on the uprise. So great question, Ferret, and ultimately I encourage you to take a deeper look at that roadmap. A lot going on there. So, all right, and then T1. So what is the update on quantum liquidity as a service? Is it going to be out once Tetu V2 is ready? Is Void going to be Sphere's first quantum liquidity as a service client? And how does quantum liquidity as a service benefit Sphere? So we are still working with Tetu on multiple things, and T1 is a good question, but we won't necessarily be able to provide more information until the time comes. Overall, though, Sphere's projects benefit Sphere through service and or performance fees that are then funneled back to the Sphere treasury for asset accumulation, eventually VE Sphere yield, and or for the buy burning contribution to Sphere's liquidity. So that is how these different products and projects will funnel back into benefit Sphere. All right. And we have Sat Prem, who has 3 different questions in the same question. Question number 1. The courses for Penrose and Unknown are at their respective all-time low. Do you discuss this in the core team, or don't you care at all? Now, the team is very aware of the performance of Penrose and Unknown. The performance of them certainly is not ideal, but ultimately they are built upon Dystopia and Cone, which are themselves almost entirely dependent on volume and liquidity within the crypto market. And if you follow anything about crypto, you can have a bit of a glimpse of the past week and how that's been, and how that may have contributed to the current state of affairs. But if you believe that those things, volume, liquidity within crypto, will return to the crypto market, then Penrose and Unknown will have more than a solid chance of regaining that momentum as well. All right, number 2. When you select DeFi on CoinGecko, Sphere is not listed, though it should be around number 95. Any reason for that? So I kind of looked into this. Sphere Finance is definitely searchable and listed in CoinGecko, but why it is not listed in the DeFi section specifically, I'm not sure. Though from what I know, it can take CoinGecko some time to make updates or changes to certain coins, and it may not be high on their priority list. Potentially something you could always reach out to CoinGecko and see. But ultimately, you can search up Sphere Finance on CoinGecko. It's just not listed in that convenient dropdown. All right, and then number 3 by Setprem. In a former AMA, Sim set the goal for 100 million market cap by the end of 2022. Are you still optimistic to reach that goal? Well, market cap goals are always going to be based on the current market conditions, and unfortunately, the crypto market as a whole is in pretty rough shape. The more time, though, that Sphere has to build during this bear market, the more opportunity we will have to catch the future market upswing, right? The more products we have, the more that we can offer services to different groups of people, the more likely we are to catch traction. So, we at Sphere, the team, feels excellent about Sphere's ability to catch that upswing if it happens this year, 2022, or not. And being that it is mid-November at this point, we are on slippery slopes for 2022 in terms of that particular goal that was mentioned previously. All right. King Market. Would it be worth having Pen, Dystopia, Unknown, and Cone pegged to USD Plus to help deal with the volatility of them, having the other pair being WMatic or BNB brought back into our USD Plus pool? So I think you're referring to having the second half of the liquidity pairing be with USD Plus. I would caution you on the use of the word pegging. Pegging is used more specifically with things like stable coins, that they are pegged to the value of the dollar, versus in a liquidity pool, you are pairing with another token. So that other token is contributing 50% of the price change in a 50-50 split, but it's not pegging the other token in that sense. So I just wanted to toss that terminology out there. But this is an interesting suggestion. It's definitely something that could be considered, but I can't make any promises myself. Ultimately, though, in the long run, we would want them pooled with volatile assets, just as with Sphere. All right. Polar asked, now that we have de-risked some of our treasury, will a wall be implemented for Sphere's price? The idea of a wall has been referenced in the past, but there will always be a limit to what that wall can handle. And the sheer power of this week's negative events are a great example of some of the significant impact that market sentiment can have on prices, unfortunately. There may be a time to deploy a wall, but it is not necessarily this moment given market sentiment. But never fear. In the meantime, Bernie's going to continue to buy and burn Sphere. Don't forget that we secured well over 550K from one of our Matic de-riskings to supply Bernie. So we are well set in terms of our what am I trying to say? Kind of the assets that we have in place to fund Bernie. All right. Satprem coming in now, coming around with another not question but comment. So I'll give it a read and have some thoughts on it as well. So not a question, but a comment regarding the FTX debacle. I guess it is now more than ever before very important to be as transparent as possible to gain and retain trust. Those people like SBF and Do Kwon have destroyed a lot of it, yeah, and have caused enormous damage to the whole industry. Absolutely. So let's fucking go, Sphere, and lead by example. By the way, as promised, I started to translate all news regarding Sphere into German, and you can find the weekly report on Medium in the German channel, and the videos will be next to come. So I do agree, true transparency is paramount, and that is the essence of the blockchain, which, and it really speaks to how powerful decentralization is versus these centralized exchanges and how that performance has been. And then I personally think actually that in the future, this job position of blockchain forensics will actually be very prominent. That's just something that I personally feel is going to be highly important as a job. But that's awesome. Regarding the translations and bringing this news to more people, I think the more exposure, the better. And I'm really glad to see you taking initiative within the community. Truly, that's awesome. All right. And Plob. Wait, did you? No, okay. All right, Plob. How are we planning to gain customers' trust to deposit their crypto in Dyson, given the recent issues with mismanagement of customers' deposits in Luna, Celsius, FTX, etc.? Well, first, Dyson is not a standalone contract, meaning that it is being built on top of other very well-known names within the marketplace. So that's one element that other customers can consider, other users. And ultimately, though, there's always going to be smart contract risks, and we are exploring some extra steps we can take. But one thing within trust too is presence and also sustainability. So in terms of Dyson being there, Dyson being launched, Dyson being present for more than extended period of time, as that is there and shows that it's doing what it was intended to do, that also builds trust. I think you'll also see that oftentimes when people talk about, what can be trusted within DeFi, they'll point to the projects that have been around the longest and say, yes, this has stood the test of time, therefore it is safer than maybe others that have not been there for longer. So that's another thing. It's just going to simply come with time. And very similar question right after by Crazy Turk. So we'll kind of expand on that. But how are you planning to gain the customer's trust to use Dyson after the successive failure of two projects, Dystopia Penrose and Cone Unknown? Well, a few things within that. We plan to hold off on releasing Dyson, as I mentioned, until we see the market cool down some. One issue when launching Dystopia Penrose, Cone Unknown is that they were released during the collapse of UST and multiple centralized exchanges like Three Arrows Capital, Voyager, whatnot, which significantly stunted their launch. Investors are always going to be free to judge new opportunities as they see fit, and we do certainly encourage everyone to always do your own due diligence of research before investing into any asset, especially crypto and DeFi. We do work hard to maintain transparency and build out the ecosystem. As you've seen, we've dedicated an entire, phase to building of the Sphere. And although we would love for every single investor to look at Sphere, see what we're doing, see what we're building, and join in, it's not necessarily realistic. And so there's nothing wrong with taking a kind of a wait and see type of approach to any new projects from Sphere or anyone else. Kind of similar to what I was mentioning about kind of standing the test of time and also seeing how things go within the market itself. And again, just to go back to Dystopia Penrose, Cone Unknown, these are, again, services for volume and liquidity. And when the only thing that's happening in the market, the crypto market, is that volume and liquidity are exiting, then of course these projects are going to struggle. So another reason why we're holding off on the release of Dyson, at least until things can calm down some. All right. Ferret Pew Pew. When Unknown 2.0? Well, we are waiting on the custom work of a Sphere and Ferret that CryptoFat asked you to do. I think that's an inside joke because I don't get it. But also kind of similar to the release of Dyson, current market conditions kind of allow us more time to build out these products and updates before their ultimate release. All right. Kid Bucko. Any chance of getting OTC for sellers or sell bonds anytime soon? With the current financial situation on any given day, a whale could desperately need cash, and we could be dumped on. OTC would be really nice just now, especially whiles we got no buyers, apart from Bernie, that is. Well, we understand the desire to relieve some of the pressure from the LP when it comes to selling, especially right now in the market. But something that we have to weigh as well is that sell bonds will take away from the Sphere treasury. So it is important for us to value those who also value the long-term potential of Sphere, and part of that is making very careful use of the Sphere treasury. Opening sell bonds right now could theoretically be seen as us encouraging the selling of Sphere, which would deplete those treasury funds, when they could be used elsewhere, especially now when the market is as it is. They are not forgotten, though. the sell bonds are not forgotten. All right. Brault. I like that name. It kind of it reminds me of Geralt. Geralt of Rivia. I was made aware of a new vocabulary word today, impermanent loss. I assume the community should be educated on this aspect with plenty of time for it to be recovered and understood, to avoid future people freaking out before they understand, so it is not feared. Yeah, definitely. Impermanent loss is a very important concept to be aware of when you are involved in crypto, yield farming as a liquidity provider. I've been notified by some of the mods of the community's desire for awareness of this, especially as it pertains to VE Sphere. So VE Sphere will be an LP of 80% Sphere, 20% another asset. So there will be an element of impermanent loss, though much less severe compared to a 50-50 pairing, for example. But I do think it's a good idea for me to look into making a video about Sphere v3 and impermanent loss specifically, so that people can be aware of it. It is also a very important concept for users of crypto in general. So thank you for bringing this to our attention. All right, Ethan24. Please, can you give us a rundown, monthly for example, of the treasury performance, as the dashboard is just never accurate? So I'm going to actually go there. Where is it? Here we are. So the the multi-farm dashboard does come with that disclaimer that the values may be inaccurate due to multi-farm updating the data with a certain delay. Also, not all elements of this treasury's performance have been fully integrated into the multi-farm dashboard for different reasons, including, I lost my spot. Okay. Including fluidity of strategies utilized. So if the treasury changes what it's doing, that may take some time to actually be reflected on the dashboard as well. In time, we do hope to continue to improve the transparency of the treasury. That is what the multi-farm dashboard is to begin with. And it's going to be a continuous process of kind of working to find a way to improve that transparency. this type of thing, I can't say for sure, but I'm just kind of thinking out loud here. My thought is that this type of thing may take a back seat to a lot of these other products and services that we're building. For example, once we're able to kind of update the website itself, that may also lead to different ways of showing transparency within the ecosystem. Regardless, in the meantime, it is always possible to track the treasury via asset management platforms like DBank, for example. And if you are curious and you do want to really dig into it, all contracts and treasury addresses are available in the contracts section of Discord, which is under the read only. All right, let me go back to my questions. Okay. All right, 2 more questions from T1. Is there any specific reason as to why Solar isn't partnered with, must be as to why Sphere isn't partnered with Solar anymore? Apparently it was due to miscommunication, but is it possible to get a more elaborated explanation on this? So in general, DeFi is a constantly changing environment, and Sphere is in communication with multiple potential partners. At time, plans and agreements can change, and if we are not on the same page with another project, then we may decide to no longer pursue a partnership. So, it is what it is on that. Also, T1 asks, in regard to Sphere v3, what's the main difference between SP Sphere and VE Sphere? I believe SP Sphere isn't locked and you can exit your position at any time, but is there any disadvantages compared to VE Sphere if you don't lock your tokens? Indeed. Great question. And likely I will be making videos more on this in the future, but I think I did cover this as well. But regardless, yes. So with VE Sphere, it does require a vesting, right? There's a lock period. With SP Sphere, that is going to be through the liquid markets. So essentially what you're doing is you're maintaining liquidity. You'll be able to stake and unstake that LP through SP Sphere. Now the rewards, the yield is going to be the same. The difference is that with VE Sphere, you are maintaining your ability to vote. You're maintaining your ability to vote on different aspects from wherever the treasury has its assets. You can funnel that voting power in order to earn bribe rewards. So that remains exclusive to the VE Sphere holders, people who are actually vesting their tokens versus simply staking them. Essentially, SP Sphere stakers are giving up their voting rights to the remaining VE Sphere holders, which is actually a pretty brilliant way to significantly concentrate the voting power of those who hold VE Sphere. If you think about it, I don't know, let's say let's just go with like general numbers. Let's say that 30% of people use SP Sphere and only 20% use VE Sphere. So that means that the VE Sphere holders are also gaining the voting power of the 30% of people in SP Sphere. So it's a really cool way to significantly concentrate the voting power of VE Sphere holders. And on top of that, of course, you have deflation, which is further going to concentrate voting power as well as a growing treasury. Yeah, you can kind of see where this starts to really snowball and take that flywheel effect. Good question, though. So, SP Sphere is going to be for people who are more interested in a passive approach, or not as interested in voting. Whereas those with VE Sphere will actively be able to vote, earn bribe rewards for that voting power, and in return for vesting those tokens. What's the downside for VE Sphere? You have to lock it. So it's a time lock, right? VE stands for vote escrowed. So currently the thought is that the maximum lock for VE Sphere will be 1 year. So essentially, if I have the, right, say I'm a user and I have this option of VE sphere versus SP sphere, I can go with SP sphere and be able to unstake at any time and maintain my liquidity if I want it. Or do I go with VE sphere and lock my tokens for a year, meaning I can't withdraw them, but I get to use my VE sphere to vote on different gauges and earn bribe rewards. So VE sphere more active in terms of what you're doing with it, able to earn those bribe rewards and use the voting power of the ecosystem, but you have to lock the tokens for a specific amount of time. Good question. I'll have to flesh that out a bit more than in a future video. Try and simplify it, make it clearer for people. And of course, those details will also become more evident as these things are built and released. Because again, it's a lot harder to conceptualize everything versus actually see it in place. It can be really difficult for people to kind of grasp some of these things when we're just talking about it, versus if you're actually able to see it, it makes a big difference in terms of how well you can understand it as also. So I definitely get that. All right, I'm going to navigate away from AMA questions at this point, go back to our, stage chat, and try and get caught up here. So any additional questions, please defer them to stage chat for this week at least. Yeah, Ultra made a comment about sphere marketing. So the crypto in general is in survival mode. Even the traditional financial markets are in the same condition. There simply is not an incentive for mass marketing by Sphere. Customer acquisition costs are unbelievably high right now, so it's better to use the available capital for yield farming in the interim. So this kind of goes to cost versus return, right? What's the cost of advertising going to be for one turnover of a user? Right now, it's going to be very high cost. So it's a wiser, more cognizant use of treasury assets to simply yield farm them, grow the treasury, build out the ecosystem. And then when we have this basket of products that's going to appeal to a much broader audience, then at that point, marketing will become easy. Another question about Penrose by James in terms of the health of Penrose and its longevity. So similar to what I mentioned previously, Penrose is built on top of Dystopia, and Dystopia is a system that relies on volume and liquidity. So right now, given the market sentiment and the market that we're in, we are in need of volume and liquidity. So naturally, those products are not going to be able to grow as much as we would like at this point in time. What's the difference between Sphere Lend and Preon? They both look extremely similar to me. There are nuances, and I'm trying to think how to best respond to this, because I did respond to it in my previous one of my previous videos, and I'm trying to think how I can most easily kind of let you know. I'm pulling up my notes here, so just a second. I do want to answer this before I move on. All right. All right, so first up, Sphere Lend. Let's talk about that for a second. So with Sphere Lend, you can lend your stable coins to users who wish to put, let's say, volatile assets up as collateral, and then Sphere Lend will be able to take those volatile assets, yield farm them, and pay that yield to the depositor, right? To the owner of the stablecoins who lent them out. And that way the borrower, the person borrowing the stablecoins with a volatile asset, won't have to pay interest, but the yield from their volatile will go to whoever is lending the stablecoin. I know that can sound confusing. I'll try and clear it up more in time, but beyond that, with the video, I mean, I'm just taking a note here. And this is also one of those things where it'll become more evident when it's actually there. Prion will be different. With Prion, you'll be able to put up crypto to borrow a Prion stablecoin, also 0% interest. Prion will yield from that collateral similar to Sphere Lend, but you're able to maintain that that yield. And now, even within that, you say, well, what's the difference there? Why would I use Sphere Lend when I could use Prion to earn the yield? And the answer is, you may not want the Prion stablecoin. With Sphere Lend, there'll be other stablecoins that you can borrow, versus with Prion, you are specifically borrowing the Prion stablecoin. And some people may not want that. So it allows us to kind of market, again, to a broader audience versus only offering the ability to put assets up for collateral to borrow a Prion stablecoin. You can put up assets for collateral to borrow other stablecoins. So hopefully I answered that. It's nuanced and it can be complicated to understand. So I'm sorry if I wasn't able to explain that here and now, but I'll definitely have to approach it again in a future video. Wonder how you could deplete the treasury. So Sub-Zero, it's not necessarily about depleting the treasury with sell bonds. It's about cognizant use of treasury funds is ultimately what it comes down to. And at the end of the day, what we want to do is support and build value for Sphere's holders. Yeah, thank you, OXJ. Just reading through the stage chat, seeing if there's any additional questions that are coming up. White paper out of date. Any plans for that to be updated? Yes, we will have to update the white paper documents in time, certainly. The impermanent loss when yield farming. How to stay safe, not get liquidated. Well, this is for Danny. Liquidation only applies if you are borrowing against your asset. So I don't fully understand your question. I do plan to make eventually a video on impermanent loss, so maybe that will help clear things up. But I'd also encourage you to take a look at different articles that explain impermanent loss and what that means. I got some people trying to explain that, so thank you for that. Right, and when you have two volatile tokens that generally move together, for example, Bitcoin and Ethereum, theoretically then the impermanent loss will be less versus two uncorrelated assets, for example, Ethereum and a stablecoin. But then, stables are kind of your ultimate correlated assets, right? Because they're both meant to be pegged to the US dollar. So the impermanent loss with a stable pair is relatively insignificant, if present at all. Yep, T1, hopefully I responded to that in terms of SP sphere versus VE sphere. And OXJ responded to that. I appreciate that. Right, that is also another point. Yo, Mama Fat, is that higher impermanent loss should theoretically bring higher yield. Quality expools explained, very good. Yeah, Finematics is excellent, has excellent descriptions. So does Whiteboard Crypto. T1, if I go for SP sphere, my sphere gets staked in an LP and I earn yield on that. Yes, though likely you will have to have the LP and then stake it as SP sphere, if you know what I mean. But yes, it'll SP sphere is essentially staking the 80/20 LP and earning yield on that, while also maintaining the ability to unstake at any time. Versus with VE sphere, your vote S crowd, you can only unstake once the S crowd period ends. OX Star, how will Sphere be able to attract institutional investors in the future? I think just by nature of what we're building, I think that's about what I can say on that. Just by nature of what we're building, you know, time will tell. In what situation will Sphere be able to remove taxes? This has come up in the past, recently as well. Taxes do serve a very important role in the ecosystem, and that's actually something I was considering making a video on, or what do specifically cell taxes right now actually serve, and quite a few things really. Obviously, it discourages selling, and it benefits long-term holders. It helps Galaxy Marketplace function. Provides another source of deflation for Sphere. There's several things that these taxes do. And in terms of being able to remove them completely, in terms of what I recall from different open discussions, is that may not be something we would want to completely remove, but it may be something we are able to reduce over time in terms of the level of the tax in order to encourage more volume. So one of the things then that we would be able to reduce taxes theoretically would be a higher market cap to be able to attract more volume. Will Sphere be interested in having its token on Binance's launchpad? Interesting question. I would say I don't have anything plus or minus for that. In terms of centralized exchanges, it's obviously not something that's been helpful for other tokens at this point in time, considering everything that's happened to centralized exchanges. But yeah. All right, and then Sub-Zero questions about the V3 pools. Will there a breakdown of where the APY comes from, like how much comes from swap fees, and the split up between blue chips, compounded LPs? Most people forget to think if Sphere has a lot of volume. We benefit from swaps as a liquidity provider. True. I think the breakdown would be great at highlighting those. Comes from. I see what you're saying. Like, what is the actual breakdown of that yield? I guess it's something we could look into. I haven't thought too much in depth on that. That's a very good point. Yeah. I'm not certain on that. Actually, Sub-Zero, I would encourage you to drop that into the suggestions section, because I think it's kind of from the user standpoint something that would be nice to see. So it's a good thing to kind of bring up, whether or not I yeah, I think it's an interesting thing. So good thought. All right. Good discussion. Yeah. I didn't think, impermanent loss is a great topic to talk about. I'm glad we had a chance to discuss it, and we'll certainly be diving more into that from my side in terms of, video education, VE sphere versus SP sphere. That's great. Good information to have out there, as well as Prion versus sphere land, why taxes are important. Yeah, definitely interesting questions this time around. Anything that sparks conversation is good, right? So we like seeing it. Well, great. I actually felt like you guys did some excellent participation this AMA despite the market. So mega props to all you guys for being here, for listening in. Are there any final questions before I close out? Can I sing for you before you go? The thing is, I'm kind of a spur of the moment kind of guy, so when you're put on the stage like that, it's much harder. I'm definitely not someone who can rap, unfortunately. But if the moment comes in the future, we may hear more of me singing. uh, a sphere song. Hmm. Honestly, I've considered it. I think it'd be really cool to do that. It's just, yeah, it takes a lot of thought into that, but it's definitely been a consideration. I will say that. All right, friends. With that, I will close off. Thanks so much for being here. We really appreciate it. This recording will be on YouTube. It goes up pretty shortly after I close off the stream, so it'll be available. And yeah, T1. I used to play more video games, but now I just don't have as much time, unfortunately. But I do enjoy myself watching video games on YouTube. So Jacksepticeye, huge fan. I'm watching his God of War Ragnarok series, which is just awesome. Ethos Lab's been, yeah, heck yeah, man. OXJ, yeah, Jacksepticeye is the boss. I've been watching him for many years. Ethos Lab I like as well. Different things like that. I watch a lot of YouTube when in my spare time. Warzone 2.0. I don't know. I have limited time, and to me, I just really enjoy watching other people play for some reason. I know why. It goes back to when I was younger, but that may be a story for another time. Okay. Thank you all again. Until next week. And yeah, if you have additional questions, be sure to drop them in AMA questions, and I'll see you then. Take care. Peace. Always remember that you matter for who you are. Bye, everyone.